"You're the one who raised me to be this way, so now get out of my house." That's what my daughter shouted at me, standing in the doorway with 2 police officers beside her. The funniest part was, the house was actually mine. "Fine, choke on this house. I hope it brings you nothing but grief," I screamed my curse at her and walked down my own front steps like a stranger, clutching a trash bag with my clothes and my blood pressure meds. I'm a bad mother. At least, that's what I told myself that night. Would a loving, caring mother ever let things get to the point where her daughter screams that at her and throws her out of her own home? I raised my daughter alone. No husband, no weekends off, no one to tag in when I was too tired to be wise. I always trained her like she was going into some kind of gladiator arena I couldn't see but was sure existed. "You have to be the best at everything," I'd tell her. "School, university, first job. You have to be first everywhere. Second place is just the first loser." Dresses and dolls? Please. I bought her math workbooks and science kits. Soccer, debate, AP classes. I thought soft things would make her weak. "The world doesn't care about your feelings," I told her. "It cares about your results." Iron discipline. Everything by schedule. Every minute accounted for. And in the end, my little girl turned out exactly like that. Ambitious, efficient, sharp, ice cold when she was scared. The hope for my daughter's bright future turned into something else over the years. This heavy, sour feeling in my chest. Guilt. Guilt that I had raised a high-functioning monster who eventually attacked her own mother and called it boundaries. But that night, standing in the parking lot with my trash bag, watching the blue and red lights paint my old porch, I wasn't thinking in those nice, therapeutic words. I was thinking, "All right, my dear girl, now it's time to teach you altruism and care and respect. A house is just walls. I'll live in a motel, and I'll teach my daughter a lesson." The motel smelled like disappointment and lemon cleaner. You know the type. Beige bedspread, air conditioner that sounds like it's coughing, a heavy TV bolted to a dresser older than I am. The kind of place you stay when life has gone sideways, not for fun. I slid my trash bag onto the chair and sat on the edge of the bed. The springs complained. My knees did too. I'm 60. I felt maybe 80 that night. I stared at the little folded card on the nightstand. "Welcome to the Sunrise Motor Lodge." Yeah, sunrise, sure. I took out my phone and opened the photos. The last one of my daughter and me together was from her promotion party a year earlier. She was in a navy dress, hair straightened, makeup perfect. I was in the same black slacks I'm wearing now, smiling like I'd finally done something right. She was already pulling away then, I realized. It was in the way her body angled toward her coworkers, not me. The way she posted the group shot to Instagram, but not the picture of just us. I zoomed in on her face, the small, tight smile. My daughter, the corporate warrior, the one who'd made it. I thought of what she'd said. "You're the one who raised me to be this way." God, that hurt more than the cops. How did we get there? You don't go from, "Mommy, look at my drawing," to "get out of my house" overnight. I got pregnant at 21, college dropout, no money, loser boyfriend who liked talking about music more than working. When I told him I was pregnant, he said, "I'm not ready for this." Like I'd offered him a free puppy, not a human child. So he left. I stayed. That's the whole story on him. I worked whatever I could get. Waitress, receptionist, retail. Then for 23 years, I worked as an office manager at a small insurance agency in Phoenix. Not glamorous, but it paid the mortgage and bought shoes. We had a tiny house then, not the one she kicked me out of. That came later. The first house was a 2-bedroom with a swamp cooler that barely worked and a yard that grew weeds better than grass. I made charts for everything. Chore charts, homework charts, piano practice charts. If there was a system to be made, I made it. You think the girls with shiny hair and cute smiles win? No, baby, the ones with discipline do. When she cried because she wanted to go to a birthday party instead of math tutoring, I said, "You'll thank me later." When she came home with a 93 on a test, I said, "Where did those 7 points go?" Sometimes late at night, I'd creep into her room, look at her sleeping, and feel this flicker of doubt. Was I too hard on her? Was I making her life miserable? Then I'd remember my own mother, passed out on the couch with an ashtray on her chest, and my own dropped out of high school path, and I'd double down. No, I told myself, love is giving her what she needs, not what she wants. She flew through school, honors, awards, scholarships. She got into ASU on a full ride, business degree, internship at a big firm, first job at a mid-sized consulting company downtown. I was so proud, I thought I'd explode. So how did I end up dragging a trash bag out of my own house while she hid behind the police? Very slowly. And then, all at once. The house she threw me out of? I bought it. When I turned 55 and the insurance agency was sold, I got a modest payout and my 401k. Not a fortune, but enough. The little starter house we'd lived in most of her childhood had tripled in value. Phoenix did that. I sold it. Between that and the payout, I could afford a small, newer 3-bedroom in a transitional neighborhood closer to downtown. Not fancy, but it had a real central air system and a little covered patio. I put the mortgage in my name. The deed, too. My daughter, by then, was making more than I ever had. She was climbing the ladder at her consulting firm, working late, having dinners with the team, bringing home branded hoodies and stainless steel water bottles like trophies. At first, she lived with roommates in some noisy complex. Then one day she called and said, "Mom, can I move in with you for a bit? My lease is up and I'm trying to save." I said yes so fast I almost bit my tongue. I imagined us cooking together, watching TV shows, talking like friends. Maybe this was the stage everyone else talked about, where your adult kids come back to you, not as dependents, but as equals. That's not what happened. She moved in like a storm. Boxes everywhere, shoes in the hallway, laptop on the kitchen table, noise at all hours. "Can you not leave your dishes in the sink?" I asked, carefully. "I'll get to them, Mom," she'd say, typing, eyes never leaving the screen. Her job spilled into every corner of the house. Phone calls at 6 in the morning, at 11 at night. "We've got a deliverable. The client moved the meeting. We're behind on the deck." Everything was about the deck. I thought they were building patios. Turned out it was PowerPoint. I tried to be understanding. She was working so hard. But the more she treated the house like a hotel, the more I reverted to drill sergeant mom. "Rent is due," I'd remind her, even though it was a token amount. "Can you not leave makeup all over the bathroom counter? Do you ever just sit and talk to me, or do I need to book you through your assistant?" Sometimes she'd laugh. Sometimes she'd sigh and say, "Mom, not everything is about you." Then she started therapy. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not against therapy. At my age, I think everyone ought to sit in a chair and unpack their baggage at least once. But I didn't realize I'd be the suitcase. She came home one day with a new set of words: boundaries, emotional labor, toxic dynamics. "It's not healthy for me when you comment on my appearance," she said when I told her she looked tired. "It's not my job to make you feel needed," she added when I asked if she'd have dinner with me instead of her coworkers. "I'm allowed to say no without feeling guilty." And you know what? On paper, she was right. I even tried to read the book her therapist recommended, something about adult children of controlling parents. I made it to chapter 3 before I threw it in the trash. It got worse when her firm went through a big change. Merger, new leadership, more pressure. She wanted to move closer to work, maybe even buy a condo with one of those rooftop pools. "You don't need this house, Mom," she said one night. "You could sell it, move to a condo for seniors or something. Less yard work, less stress." I like my yard, though my knees didn't. "We could, I don't know, put it in both our names? Think about the future." I shut that down, politely, but firmly. "This house is my security," I told her. "You have your job, I have these walls." I saw something close in her face when I said that. After that, every conversation about chores, noise, money felt sharper on both sides, like we were fencing with real blades instead of foils. The night it all blew up,
I came home from grocery shopping and found 6 people in my living room.
Her coworkers. They had laptops open, pizza boxes on my coffee table, and one guy had his shoes up on my ottoman. I saw red. "What is this?" I asked. "We're cramming on the Henderson proposal," my daughter said, not looking up. "It's due tomorrow. We needed a quiet place." "You have an office," I snapped. "You have conference rooms. And no one has time to get approval to book one," she said. "Mom, don't start. We'll be out in a few hours." "There's grease on my rug," I said, because that was easier than saying what I really felt. Invisible in my own home. She stood up. She was taller than me now. That had happened sometime in high school, and I'd never quite gotten used to it. "I pay you rent," she said slowly. "You said this was my home too." "Yes, but what?" Her voice rose. "But I have to act like a guest? Like I'm 10? Like every choice I make needs to be cleared by General Mom?" Her coworkers stared. Embarrassment crawled up my neck. "Could you at least have asked?" I said lower. "It's a respect thing." "You want to talk about respect?" She laughed, a hard little sound. "You never respected me having a life, friends, downtime. Everything has to fit into your little schedule." I should have walked away. I should have said, "We'll talk later." Instead, I said, "While you're living in my house, you'll follow my rules." Her face changed then. Not anger, something colder. "You know what?" she said. "That's the problem. You think everything is yours." The words came fast after that. A long, ugly argument that had been building for years poured out in 15 minutes. How I'd controlled her childhood, how I'd minimized her feelings, how she never felt good enough, how I resented her success, how she resented my sacrifices. Then she said it. "Maybe it's time we got some space. You're retired. You can get your own place. I make the actual payments here now. I've been paying more than you every month. This feels like my house." "That's not how ownership works," I snapped. "My name is on that deed." Her jaw clenched. "We'll see." I didn't realize how serious she was until 3 days later when 2 police officers knocked on the door right after dinner. "Ma'am, we've had a call about a domestic dispute and a possible trespassing situation," the taller one said. I stared at them. "In my own home?" My daughter appeared behind them, eyes red but face set. "Officers, I need her to leave," she said. "She's escalating. She's yelling at my coworkers. She threw a plate last night." I had. It hit the sink, not anyone, but still. "She's creating an unsafe environment." "Unsafe?" I repeated. "You've got to be kidding me." The officers did their calm thing, explained about how if she was a resident there and felt threatened, they could ask me to leave for the night, that it was a civil matter, that we could start it out later. "You're the one who raised me to be this way," my daughter said when I called her heartless. "You told me to put myself first, to protect my future. Well, this is me doing that." Then, "Now get out of my house." I felt something crack inside me. It wasn't my heart. I think that had cracked quietly years earlier. This was something else. The last little bit of belief that I knew what I was doing as a mother. "Fine," I said. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. "Choke on this house. I hope it brings you nothing but grief." The officers shifted, uncomfortable, but I walked out with my trash bag. I didn't look back. The first 2 days at the motel, I didn't do much besides cry, watch bad TV, and stare at the cracked ceiling. On day 3, I woke up angry. Not loud angry, not plate-throwing angry, cold angry. Organized angry. I sat at the little laminate desk, took out the motel notepad, and wrote at the top in shaky letters, "What does she value?" Underneath, I made a list. Her job, her reputation, her sense of being better, her future, control. I stared at the words a long time. Then I wrote, "What did I teach her?" The list was almost the same. Be the best. Don't show weakness. Win. Protect your interests. Never be the one who gets used. The thought slid into my mind so quietly, I almost missed it. If I raised her like a fighter, and she used that to hurt me, hadn't I lost the fight? I couldn't stand that idea. I'd given everything.
my youth, my time, my sanity, my body. And she'd used all the tools I gave her to cut me out of my own life. All right, I thought. You want to play corporate gladiator? Game on.
I knew where my daughter worked. She'd dragged me there once for an open house tour. 15th floor of a glass box downtown. Lobby with glass art and a coffee bar. Big screens showing stock photos of teams and innovation. The name of the firm was something forgettable. 3 initials, maybe? They all sound the same to me. What I remembered more clearly was the night cleaning crew. While my daughter had introduced me to her boss, her team, the office dog, I'd watched a man push a cleaning cart down the hallway. He was invisible, in the way only people who clean up after others are invisible. He moved around them like water around rocks. Outsourced, my daughter had said when I asked. Some vendor. We just get a monthly invoice. So I Googled the building, found the property management company, found the vendor list. That led me to a commercial cleaning company with a bland website and a now hiring button. I hadn't worked in 6 months. Retirement had been nice for about 2 weeks. After that, it was just a lot of empty time and too many true crime documentaries. I clicked apply. The online application didn't ask much. Name, age, availability. I left my work history vague. Office manager, 23 years. No company name. I figured they wouldn't care. They just needed someone who could push a vacuum and not steal laptops. An hour later, my phone rang. "Hi, this is Miguel from Summit Facility Services," a cheerful voice said. "You applied for a part-time custodial position?" We did a quick phone interview. Was I okay with evenings? Could I lift 30 pounds? Did I have any issues with cleaning restrooms? "I've cleaned up after other people my whole life," I said, "professionally and personally." He laughed. "You sound perfect. We've had trouble keeping folks at one of our downtown accounts. It's a consulting firm in the Central Business District. You'd be on a team, evenings, Monday through Friday. Interested?" My heart thudded. "What's the address?" I asked, though I already knew. He told me. Same building, same firm. Fate, I thought. Or karma. Or just a very grim coincidence. "Yes," I said. "I'm interested." My uniform was a navy polo shirt with the Summit logo and black pants I bought at Walmart. They gave me a badge. Not like my daughter's sleek little multi-access card. This one only worked on service elevators and back doors. It said contractor in big letters under my name, Marlene. My name is Marlene, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. On my first night, the team supervisor, a woman named Anita, showed me around. "The client is very particular," she said as we rode the service elevator. "They pay well, but they complain a lot. They want desks wiped but not moved, screens not touched, bathrooms spotless, trash emptied but nothing important thrown away, and they send emails if there's dust on anything." I nodded. "I used to manage an office," I said. "I know the type." We stepped into the 15th floor lobby. It was 7:30 p.m., but a few people were still there, hunched over laptops, glowing in the blue-white light. I scanned the faces automatically. She wasn't there. Good. I wasn't ready yet. We had a routine. Empty trash cans, wipe surfaces, vacuum, clean conference rooms, restock bathrooms, repeat on every floor we covered. I moved slowly at first, feeling my knees, my back, the unfamiliar bend and lift pattern. By the third night, my muscles remembered enough that I didn't groan every time I stood up. The thing about working in an office after hours is you see the ghosts of the day. Coffee rings on desks, sticky notes with scribbled tasks, half-eaten granola bars, whiteboards with half-erased strategy phrases, align stakeholders, drive growth, own the narrative. But you also hear things, because not everyone leaves at 5, or 6, or 7. Some of them stay. The ambitious ones, the scared ones, the ones who don't want to go home. On my 4th night, I finally saw her. She was in a glass conference room, alone, the glow of her laptop outlining her like she was on stage. Her hair was up in a messy knot. Her blazer was on the back of a chair. She was staring at her screen with the expression I knew well, calculating, stressed, a little angry.
I was across the hall, wiping fingerprints off a glass partition. My uniform polo felt like a costume, but not enough that my heart didn't jump into my throat. Even from that distance, I could tell she'd lost weight.
There were shadows under her eyes. An empty coffee cup and a half-eaten container of something sat beside her. My daughter, my former roommate, my evictor. I ducked my head, turned my shoulder, became what everyone thought I was, invisible. She didn't look up. The first time I sabotaged her, it was almost an accident. Almost. I was emptying recycling bins in one of the collaboration spaces when I saw her handwriting on a printed email. Her handwriting is distinctive. Sharp little angles, very neat. The email was between her and someone named Dan, managing director. It was about a client called Henderson Manufacturing. From the subject line, I gathered it was some huge account, the kind you build careers on. Lauren, the email began, good work on the initial analysis. Let's refine the deck from Monday's steering committee. Need to tighten the narrative. Henderson cares about cost savings and implementation risks, not buzzwords. Below, her reply, understood. I'll reframe slides 7 through 15. Focus on savings and risk mitigation. We'll coordinate with Priya on modeling. We'll be ready. The printed email had notes in the margin. Her notes. Ask Jeff for updated numbers. Check last year's performance versus target. I should have dropped it back in the bin and moved on. Instead, I smoothed it out. What are you doing? I asked myself. I read it again. Monday. Big meeting. Her boss's boss involved. I folded the printed page carefully and slid it between 2 magazines on the low coffee table. Oops, I could say later if anyone somehow traced it to me. Those consultants leave drafts everywhere. It was such a small thing. No one cares about paper anymore, right? It's all email and cloud storage. But people still like to print, to scribble, to think with their hands. The next night, I saw her in that same area, rifling through recycling with a tight face. It was just here, she muttered to a coworker. The printed version with Dan's notes. It had my list. Can't you just reprint it? The coworker said lazily. Yes, but forget it. Her voice had that brittle edge. I walked by, pushing my cart, eyes down. The magazines on the coffee table were neat, undisturbed. Just a test, I told myself. Just seeing if I could touch the edges of her world. You'd be surprised how much power a cleaning lady has. We go everywhere. We see everything. With my cart and my badge, I could walk into any conference room, any office, any focus pod. No one questioned me. If anyone was still around, they barely looked up. I learned the names and faces quickly. Dan, the managing director with the expensive watch and the habit of leaving his empty protein shake bottles on his desk. Priya, the numbers wizard, who lived in spreadsheets and whispered into her headset in a soothing Indian accent. Jeff, who laughed too loud but stayed latest of all, typing frantically. And of course, my daughter, Lauren. I listened when they talked at 8:30 p.m., when they were too tired to keep their voices down. She acts like she's the only one who works hard, someone said once, not realizing sound carries through glass. She's good, though, another replied. Dan trusts her. Yeah, but she's intense. They said intense the way polite people say unpleasant. Other nights, I caught snippets from different groups. She sent that email and CC'd everyone. She's so direct. She doesn't sugarcoat. I heard respect. I heard resentment. I knew those tones. I'd heard them about myself plenty. The rumors didn't start all at once. That would have been sloppy. No, I started like any good strategist, small, deniable, testing the terrain. First, I became a presence. Hi there, I'd say to whoever was still around at night. Are you burning the midnight oil again? Sometimes they'd smile, make a joke. Sometimes they'd grunt. Crazy week, one woman said. Lauren has us redoing the Henderson deck again. Oh, Lauren, I'd tilt my head like I was thinking. The one with the pretty hair? The project lead,
The one, Dan's golden child. Ah, I'd say, like I just remembered something small and unimportant. She seems very driven. Then I'd move on. Planting a seed is like that. Quick, casual, no pressure. Other times, I'd find a jacket on the back of a chair and carry it to the person's desk. You left this in the conference room. You must be so busy. Lauren's keeping you all running, huh? A raised eyebrow here, a sigh there. People love sharing their grievances with someone they think won't repeat them. She's smart, but she has no idea how to talk to people, one young guy said.
Everything is a crisis. It's like she forgets we have lives, another added. She sends messages on weekends and expects answers. I'd nod. Some folks learn people skills later, I'd murmur. If at all. Then as I wiped down a desk nearby, I'd say, just loud enough, my boss at my last job was like that, always pushing people past what they could handle. It came back to bite her. No names, no specifics, just a story-shaped warning. They'd look up, their brains would do the rest. The first time I lost something for her, it wasn't on accident, but it was on principle. On a Tuesday night, around 9 p.m., I was vacuuming near her pod when she stood up suddenly, yanked open her drawer, and cursed under her breath. "Where the hell did it go?" she muttered. A coworker looked over. "What?" "The draft of the risk memo for Henderson," she said, rifling through her bag. "I printed it and marked it up. Now it's gone." "Just reprint it." "I can't. I wrote the notes by hand. Never mind." She grabbed her laptop and walked briskly to a conference room, jaw tight. 5 minutes later, in the quiet room down the hall, I saw it. Her draft. Neatly under a chair, like someone had slid it there with their foot. I picked it up, read the header. Henderson, risk assessment, draft. Footnotes everywhere. Her little handwriting. Clarify this. Too harsh? Check numbers with Priya. I stood there for a good 30 seconds. Then, I walked into an empty office, opened the shredder bin, and slid the pages in with the rest of the confetti. "Oops," I whispered. If she'd left a digital trail, she could rebuild it. But it would cost her something. Time, sleep, sanity. The next night, I overheard the fallout. "We're behind on the risk memo," someone said in the kitchen. "Lauren was supposed to have it ready for Dan yesterday," another replied. "She said she had a draft and then it just disappeared." "Yeah, she's been spacey lately." Spacey. My relentlessly organized daughter called spacey. The word made a strange, bitter satisfaction bloom in my chest. I'd spent years being the only one allowed to criticize her. Now, strangers were doing it for me. I'm not proud of what I did over the next 6 weeks. If you're looking for a redemption story where I tried once to hurt her and then repented, stop reading. I didn't repent. I became surgical. Every night, I walked through that office like it was a battlefield and I was a sniper. I never did anything huge. That would be too obvious. Instead, I nudged. I listened to who she needed to impress, then I quietly chipped away at the edges of those relationships. "Dan likes her," one analyst told me while I emptied his trash. "She's basically his right hand." "Those are dangerous positions," I said lightly. "I've seen people in offices like this get set up to take the fall when something goes sideways. The higher you are, the more exposed you are, you know?" He frowned thoughtfully. "Yeah, I guess." 2 nights later, when I passed the same guy, he was telling another coworker, "You know, Lauren took a pretty aggressive stance in that client meeting. If this Henderson thing tanks, she's the one on the hook." I didn't do that. I just aimed the thought. With documents, I was careful. I never altered anything. That felt beyond the line. Even in my low place, I knew better than to forge signatures or change numbers. But paper is slippery. A printed report on someone's desk could end up under a stack of magazines in the break room. A folder labeled Henderson, Final, could get tucked behind the mail rack in the copy room.
A sticky note with "Ask Priya about model changes" could be moved from her monitor to the edge of her keyboard where it might stick to someone's sleeve and travel away. "Lauren's been disorganized lately," I heard one manager say. "She missed 2 follow-ups last week." "She's stretched thin," another replied. "She's leading Henderson and juggling 3 smaller accounts. Maybe she's overextended." I wiped the conference table in slow circles, my face bland. They weren't wrong. She was overextended. She'd always taken on too much. I'd taught her that too. If you can do more, you must. If you can carry 10 plates, carry 11. Exhaustion is weakness. Rest is for people who don't want it badly enough. I wondered sometimes, late at night, if I was just accelerating a crash she was heading towards anyway. Then I'd picture her face in my doorway, lined with anger and righteousness as she told me to get out. And I'd find something else to misplace. The rumors were the easiest part. People love a story that confirms what they already suspect. "She seems stressed," I'd say to someone microwaving their dinner at 8 p.m. "You all do. Is this normal here?" They'd roll their eyes.
Quarter-end hell, plus Henderson. Our lives are owned by that client right now. "I see her here every night," I'd reply, "even later than you." That kind of pace does things to people, makes them sharp. My old boss started snapping at everyone when corporate piled things on her. People stopped trusting her. The person would nod slowly, going back in their mind over the times my daughter had snapped. "It's just pressure," they'd say. "Of course," I'd agree. Still, sometimes people in charge forget that how they treat folks on the way up comes back around. I never said, "Lauren is mean," or "Lauren is unstable," or anything like that. I didn't have to. I just put a frame around her behavior. The picture filled itself in. You might be wondering about the legal side of all this. Yes, I know some of what I did danced on the edge of what's allowed. Sabotaging someone's professional materials, stirring the pot at their workplace, those are serious things. If anyone had caught me, I could have lost my job, and my daughter could have had grounds for a complaint, or even a suit if she'd connected the dots. That risk was part of why it felt so sharp. Every time I moved a folder instead of putting it back where it belonged, every time I made an offhand comment I knew would echo, I understood I was taking a chance. Not just with her life, but with mine. I'm not telling you any of this so you'll copy it. I'm telling you because, in that dark headspace, I decided punishing her was worth what it might cost me. That's not wisdom. That's obsession. The night everything changed, the air in the office felt different. Even before anyone said the words, "big meeting," I knew something was coming. New flowers in the lobby, fresh pastries laid out in the kitchen, a hum of nervous energy in every corner. In the copy room, 2 analysts were whispering, "Tomorrow's the big Henderson steering committee. Dan's boss is flying in. If this goes well, Lauren's basically guaranteed that promotion to director." "If it doesn't go well?" the other asked. The first one grimaced. "Then she's the one who owns it." Promotion. Director. The words felt heavy. I pictured my daughter in some corner office, buying a nicer condo, telling her therapist how brave she was for cutting her toxic mother out. I thought of that house, my name on the deed, my memories in the walls, my knees in the tile floors. I thought of her bringing strangers in, saying, "We'll paint over that," erasing me room by room. I stood in the copy room with a stack of printer paper in my hands and made a decision I can't ever take back. If Henderson was her golden ticket, I was going to tear it in half. This is what you have to understand about access badges. In a place like that, the badge is everything. It gets you into the lobby, the elevator, your floor, secure conference rooms. It tracks when you come and go. I watched my daughter with hers for weeks. She wore it on a simple black lanyard. Sometimes when she was tired, she'd take it off and drop it in her tote bag. Other times she'd toss it on her desk, distracted by her phone. I never touched it. Not until the night before the big meeting.
She worked late, of course. Everyone did. At 10:30 p.m., my shift was almost over, but she and a skeleton crew were still in the main conference room, rehearsing. I could see them through the glass, slides flashing on the big screen, my daughter pacing as she talked, gesturing at charts. She was in her element, strong, confident, exactly what I'd trained her to be. Her tote bag sat on the floor near the door to the conference room, half open. Her badge lay on top of a notebook, the photo of her face just visible. Anita sent me down to the loading dock to check a supply delivery. It took 10 minutes. When I came back, the lights were off in the conference room. The door was closed. They'd gone home. Her tote bag was gone. On her desk, though, next to her monitor, was something small and rectangular. Her badge. She must have taken it off during practice and forgotten to clip it back on. I looked up and down the hallway. Empty. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I picked up the badge. Her photo looked up at me. Professional, serious, just a hint of a smile. I slipped it into my pocket. Then I took out my own badge and looked at it. Marlene. Contractor. It had a different color stripe, different permissions.
But the shape, the plastic, the clip, they were almost identical. I knew there were spares somewhere. Lost badges, old ones from people who'd left. Summit kept a little box of them in the supply closet for reference. Deactivated, useless plastic, but they looked real. I went to the closet, opened the box, flipped through, found one that matched her company's style. Same color stripe, no photo. Just a blank white space where one had been scratched off. I wiped it on my sleeve, clipped it to a plain lanyard I'd found in the lost and found bin. In the service hallway, under the humming fluorescent lights, I made the swap. Her real badge went into my zipped pocket. The dead one went onto her desk where her hand would reach for it on autopilot in the morning. I finished my shift with trembling hands. That night, back at the motel, I put her badge on the bedspread and stared at it like it might come alive. This is insane, I told myself. This was beyond misplacing papers or nudging gossip. This was a direct hit. If she couldn't get into that meeting on that day, it wouldn't just be embarrassing, it would be catastrophic. I thought of calling it off, going back early, fixing it. Instead, I slid the badge under the motel Bible in the nightstand drawer. Let God deal with it, I thought bitterly. Morning came heavy and slow. I don't usually work mornings. Summit had day crews for that, but I woke up before my alarm, heart already racing. What was I going to do? Sit in that motel and watch game shows while my daughter's life tilted? It turns out revenge is a lot like addiction. Once you start, sitting still becomes impossible. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in the cafe across from the building, nursing a burnt coffee I didn't want. I watched people stream in. Suits, smart casual, expensive sneakers, tote bags, laptop backpacks. At 9:27, I saw her. She wore a dark green dress I'd never seen before and a black blazer. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek twist. She walked fast, heels clicking, talking into her phone. We'll open with the cost savings slide, then transition to implementation. No, Dan's right, we can't oversell. Henderson is conservative. We need to be grounded. She flashed by the cafe window like a comet. I swallowed hard. The time is now, I told myself, like one of those motivational posters. My stomach churned. I couldn't see the lobby from my seat. Too many reflections. But I could imagine it. She'd walk in, scan her badge at the turnstile, it would beep red. Once, twice, 3 times. Security would frown. Try again? She would, growing more frantic. People behind her would line up, impatient. Maybe she'd laugh it off. Must be a glitch. Maybe she'd call someone upstairs. My hands shook so badly I spilled coffee on the table. What had I done? I was halfway out of my seat, ready to run across, fix it somehow, when I saw her again. 20 minutes later. She was outside, on the sidewalk, on her phone,
Face flushed. No, I don't know what happened. I used it last night. They're saying it's invalid. Pause. No, I am not making a scene. I'm locked out of the building before the most important meeting of my career. Pause. Can someone come down and escort me up or print me a temporary... She broke off, turning away. I could see it, even if I couldn't hear it. The no on the other end. Protocols, security, liability. You can't just walk someone into a restricted meeting without their credentials. Badges are like keys and signatures all in one. She hung up. For a long moment, she just stood there, on the sidewalk, breathing hard. Then she sat down on the low concrete wall by the landscaping shrubs. People streamed in around her. Some glanced her way. Most didn't. She checked her phone again, tried calling someone else, shook her head. I watched her like it was a movie, and I lost the remote. After a while, she stood up, squared her shoulders, and went inside again, walking like she'd decided sheer force of will could bend systems. 10 minutes later, she came back out. This time, she looked smaller. She sat on the wall again, hands in her lap, staring at nothing. The meeting started without her. You might think I felt triumphant. I thought I would. I thought there would be this rush, this electric satisfaction. Instead, watching her sit there, so alone, I felt like I'd swallowed gravel. This was my child, the one whose hair I'd braided for picture day, the one I'd sat up with when she had a fever, the one I'd driven to a million practices in a car that barely ran.
I'd just taken a hammer to the foundation of her adult life. Good, a colder part of me said. Now she'll know what it feels like to have everything yanked out from under her. That's your daughter, another part whispered. You taught her to climb and then you greased the ladder. I stayed in that cafe until my coffee went cold. Finally, I forced myself to leave. There was nothing more to do. The arrow was in the air. The fallout took a few days to become visible. Back at Summit that night, Anita mentioned it in passing. Something went down at that consulting account today, she said as we stocked the cleaning carts. Our contact was in a mood. She said one of their leads missed some huge meeting because of a badge issue. They're all blaming security. My chest tightened. Really? Yeah, they had some bigwig clients in. Apparently the lead on the project couldn't get into the building. The security guys are saying the badge was invalid, so it's not their fault. The firm's HR is getting involved. It's a whole thing. She shook her head. Rich people problems. On the 15th floor, the air was different. Usually, there was a low hum, even at night. Laughter here, a joke there. That night, it was mostly quiet. Tight. My daughter's desk lamp was off. She wasn't there. Her team was, though. I recognized the faces from my weeks of quiet observation. They spoke in low voices. She's the project lead, one said. You can't just show up late to a steering committee like that. Or not at all. It wasn't her fault, another replied. Security screwed up. She should have come in early, the first countered. You don't risk that on a day like today. Dan was livid. Did she actually not get in at all? A third asked. She was banging on the glass like a vampire, someone said with a humorless laugh. I heard one of the receptionists talking about it. Underneath the jokes, I heard something else. Fear. People in places like that are always watching for who's falling out of favor. It's survival. If someone's star dims, you sidestep. You don't want to be too close when they hit the ground. I emptied trash cans, wiped surfaces, kept my eyes down. In my pocket, her real badge felt like a hot coal. 2 nights later, she came in late. I was in the kitchen restocking paper towels when she walked in. No makeup, hair in a loose ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual polished outfits. She went straight to the fridge, opened it, stared inside without really looking. I froze, my hand on the paper towel dispenser. She looked not broken. I don't think I've ever seen her broken, but dented. Her shoulders were slumped in a way I didn't recognize, like the weight she'd been carrying had suddenly doubled. Priya walked in behind her. "Hey," she said softly, "how are you holding up?" My daughter gave a small, brittle laugh. "You mean, how am I enjoying my little vacation outside the inner circle?" Priya winced. "That's not what I meant." "It's fine," she said. "They made their decision. We can't have this level of unreliability on a client of this magnitude." That's a direct quote. My hands clenched around the roll of paper towels. "They're wrong," Priya said. "Everyone knows you're the most reliable person here." "Apparently not everyone," my daughter murmured. She pulled out a yogurt, then seemed to forget it in her hand. "Henderson was my shot. Even if I don't get fired, my reputation is damaged." There it was, the thing I'd wanted. I thought it would taste sweet. It didn't. "They're still figuring out what to do," Priya said. "HR's involved, security, IT. They're trying to trace who deactivated your badge. There's an investigation." I almost dropped the paper towels. Investigation. Of course there was. In a firm like that, nothing happens quietly. Everything is logged, audited, reviewed. "I'm sure they'll figure it out," my daughter said, but there was no conviction in her voice. "Anyway, I've got a meeting with HR tomorrow. Maybe they'll offer me a consolation prize. Thank you for your service. Here's a box." "That won't happen," Priya said. "You'd be surprised." She left the yogurt on the counter and walked out. After she was gone, I took the yogurt, put it back in the fridge. It was such a small, stupid act of care that I almost laughed. I could torpedo her career, but God forbid a perfectly good yogurt go to waste. The next day, I didn't have to imagine HR.
I saw the outcome. Around 5 p.m., as we were loading supplies into the elevator, the lobby security guy I'd gotten friendly with shook his head. "Rough day up there," he said. "They just escorted someone out. One of the consultants. Lauren something?" My throat went dry. "Escorted?" I repeated. He nodded. "HR meeting, then out the door with her stuff in a box. It happens." My knees went weak. I gripped the handle of the cart until my knuckles went white. "Did she say anything?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged. "Nah, just looked pissed. And I don't know. Like someone punched her in the gut." He adjusted his tie. "You see enough of these, you get used to it. Companies eat people." I excused myself and went to the restroom. In the stall, I sat on the closed toilet and pressed my hands to my face. I'd wanted her fired. I'd aimed for it. I'd done this. She had dragged me out of my home with the police. She had told me I was toxic. She had said cruel, cutting things. And I had answered not with words, not even with silence. I'd answered like a saboteur. I'd infiltrated her workplace, weaponized my invisibility, and destroyed the one thing she valued most, her career. Sitting in that restroom stall, listening to the hum of the air vent, I felt a hot sting behind my eyes. "This is what you wanted," I told myself. So why did it feel like I'd just torn out a piece of my own chest? I didn't go to work the next night. I called in sick. Miguel sounded surprised, but he covered the shift. I sat in my motel room, staring at my phone. No calls, no messages from her. There hadn't been any since the night she threw me out. What was I expecting? That she'd somehow know it was me and send a dramatic text? That she'd beg me to fix it? Of course not. She didn't know where I was. I'd made sure of that. The address on my file at Summit was the motel, but I hadn't told her anything. I thought of the house, my house. Technically, nothing had changed. I still owned it. The police hadn't cared that night because to them it was just a civil dispute between two residents. But legally, on paper, it was mine. I could have gone to a lawyer, filed some paperwork, served her with something. Instead, I'd gone for her job, because that's where she lived emotionally. That was her real home. Now what? I asked the empty room. The motel bed didn't answer. 3 days after I found out she'd been fired, there was a knock on my door. I froze. I don't get visitors. The front desk leaves towels on a cart by the stairs.
If something's wrong with payment, they call. They don't knock. The knock came again. 3 quick taps. My heart hammered. I stood slowly, went to the door, and looked through the peephole. It was her. My daughter. Hair in a messy bun, no makeup, wearing a sweatshirt I'd bought her in high school. For a second, all I could think was, she found me. Of course she did. I'm not a spy. My mail still went to the house, and I'd had Summit send my pay stubs by email, but the motel had my name on their register. If she'd gone looking at all, she could have tracked me down. I stepped back from the door like I'd just seen a wild animal. She knocked again. "Mom, I know you're there." She sounded not angry, not righteous, just tired. "Please," she added, "I don't have anywhere else to go." That sentence pushed me forward like a hand on my back. I opened the door. We stared at each other. Up close, the changes were harsher. She had deep circles under her eyes, a little crease between her brows I didn't remember. Her lips were cracked, like she'd been too distracted to drink water. "Hi," she said weakly. "Hi," I echoed. We stood in awkward silence. "How did you—" I started. She lifted a shoulder. "You keep your social security card in the same place you did 10 years ago, top drawer of your nightstand. I used it to check your credit report. Saw a new address at the motel. I'm not proud of that." I snorted. "Like mother, like daughter." We both almost smiled. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. I'd imagined this moment 100 ways. In most of them, I was the one who opened with a monologue, something sharp, clever, rehearsed. Instead, I stepped aside and said, "Watch the wet spot by the bathroom, the link leaks." She came in, looked around, took in the bed, the tiny table, the little pile of my life in the corner.
Her throat moved like she was swallowing something hard. "Mom," she said softly, "I didn't realize." "What?" I snapped, defensive. "You thought I'd be at a spa?" She flinched. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she sat on the edge of the bed. Her shoulders sagged. "I got fired," she said. I sat in the chair by the table. It squeaked. "I heard," I replied. Her eyes snapped to mine. "You heard?" "I still get around," I said. "Phoenix isn't that big." She frowned. "You retired." I got bored. She stared at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing shape. "Anyway," I said, crossing my arms, "you got fired, destroyed your own life, did you?" She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Always straight to the point, Mom." Her hands twisted in her lap. "You're not going to ask what happened?" she said. "I know what happened. You missed a big meeting. They decided you were disposable. That's how these places work." Her jaw clenched. "I didn't miss it. My badge got deactivated," I finished. "Yes, I know." She stared at me. Really stared. "How?" she whispered. I didn't realize until that moment that I'd just stepped closer to a minefield. I could have lied. I could have said, "Your Aunt Debbie's neighbor's cousin works in security," or some nonsense. Instead, I said nothing. Her eyes narrowed slowly. "Where are you working, Mom?" she asked. I swallowed. "That's not important." "The truth," she said. Her voice had iron in it, even now. "Please." Sometimes, when you've been lying by omission for a long time, the truth comes out faster than you expect. "I'm cleaning offices downtown, night shifts." Her lips parted. "Downtown where?" "In one of those glass boxes you like so much." She paled. "Which building?" she pressed. I looked away. She stood up. "Which building?" she repeated, louder. "Yours," I said, finally. "I work in your building." The word hung there. "Worked," I corrected. Past tense. I'll probably have to quit. She stared at me like I'd just told her I'd been hiding in her closet. "How long?" she asked. "Couple of months." "Couple of—" She closed her eyes. "You saw me there?" "Of course I saw you," I snapped. "You're not invisible, Lauren. Not to me." Her laugh was humorless.
Funny, because I sure never saw you. That was the idea, I muttered. We looked at each other, the lines between us suddenly much more complicated. You knew about my badge, she said slowly. You knew about the meeting. I didn't answer. She took a step closer, her voice very quiet. Mom? What did you do? There are moments as a parent when you realize your child has stopped being your child and become an adult standing in front of you, capable of judging you, not just resenting you, not just blaming you, judging you. I judged my own mother plenty, for her drinking, for her men, for leaving me to fend for myself. I'd promised I'd be different. Now here I was, 60 years old, standing in a motel room about to confess to my daughter that I'd sabotaged her career. I could have lied. I could have minimized. I could have said, I had nothing to do with it, but I'm glad it happened. You deserved it after what you did to me. But revenge, for all its rush, had done one good thing. It had held up a mirror. I didn't like what I saw in it. So I told her. Not everything, not every rumor I nudged, not every document I misplaced, but the important parts. I saw how much that job meant to you, how much Henderson meant. I heard your coworkers talking about the promotion, the director title. Her expression was unreadable. I was angry, I said, my voice shaking. I'd thrown you out of my house. You'd used all the tools I gave you, discipline, ambition, hard edges, to cut me out of your life. So I decided to hit you where it hurt. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. I got a job with the cleaning company that services your building. I don't know what I thought. That I'd see you fall behind or get scolded and feel satisfied. That I'd teach you a lesson about respect. I laughed bitterly. I told myself you'd only gotten as far as you had because of me, that without my constant pushing, you'd crumble. So I became the push in the other direction. I swallowed hard. The day before your big meeting, you left your badge on your desk. I took it. I replaced it with a dead badge from the supply closet, one that looked the same but didn't work. She stared at me like I'd slapped her.
You what? She whispered. I swapped your access card, I repeated, so that when you tried to get in the next morning, it would deny you. I wanted you to miss that meeting. I wanted them to see you as unreliable. The words tasted like rust. She took a step back and braced herself against the wall. I waited for her to explode, to shout, to call me names, to say the sort of things that would make us both regret ever opening this door. Instead, she asked a quiet, raw question. Why? I blinked. I just told you. No, she interrupted. Not the angry part. Not the teach me a lesson part. Why that? Why my job? Why not get a lawyer and take the house? Why not, I don't know, some normal revenge? I thought about it. Really thought. Because, I said slowly, your job is where you live. She frowned. You live in those slides and memos and late nights. You live in your reputation. That office is your home more than any building with a bed is. If I took the house, you could say, I'll buy another. You'd hustle. You'd fix it. But if people stopped seeing you as perfect, as unstoppable, I took a shaky breath. I wanted you to feel powerless, I admitted. The way I did, standing on that porch with the police behind you. I wanted you to stand outside something you thought you owned and be told, you can't come in. A tear slipped down her cheek. You're right, she said softly. The words startled me. About what? I asked. She looked up, her eyes wet. My job is where I live, she said. It's the only place I ever felt enough, useful, in control. She laughed weakly. Therapy told me I had to set boundaries, but it also told me I was over-identifying with work, that it was dangerous. I didn't listen.
Silence settled between us like dust. "So," she said finally, wiping her face, "your big plan worked. I'm homeless in my own way. No job, no director title. My home spit me out, just like I did to you." I flinched. "You did that yourself," I said sharply. "You called the cops. You told me to get out." "I know," she said quickly. "I know I did. And it was cruel. And I regret it every single day. I've been replaying that night over and over in my head. The things I said, the way I said them. I wanted to apologize and didn't know how to find you." She exhaled, long and shaky. "When I told you you raised me to be this way, I meant it like a weapon. But it was also true. You did raise me to be hard and ruthless and to cut out anything that looked like weakness. I thought cutting you out was strength. I didn't realize I was cutting out the only person who would have told me when I was going too far." I shook my head slowly. I didn't exactly model healthy boundaries. I treated feelings like distractions. I pushed you until you thought resting was a sin. I never let you say no. I made love conditional on performance. That was my training. We both laughed, humorless again. "This is a hell of a performance review." "That's one way to put it," I replied. We sat in that shabby motel room and did something we'd never really done before. We told the truth. Not the polished, "I did my best, you did your best" version. The ugly truth. I told her about my childhood, the instability, the fear, the way I swore my kid would never feel the ground shift under her feet the way I had. I decided you would never need anyone, that dependence was dangerous. So I treated softness like a disease. I thought I was making you strong. Maybe I was just making you hard. She told me about her therapy, how it had felt like waking up in a strange house and realizing it was your own life. She learned words for things she'd never named: control, enmeshment, emotional parentification. I got angry. At you. At myself. At everything I missed while I was busy performing for you. She twisted the edge of the motel sheet between her fingers. I admitted setting boundaries meant slamming doors. I thought healing meant cutting off anything that hurt. My therapist suggested we invite you to a session, but I didn't want you in that room. She looked at me, eyes shining. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not just for what I said the night with the police, for letting my anger at my childhood blind me to the fact that you're a person, that you did what you knew, that you loved me, even if it was messed up." I swallowed around a lump in my throat. "I'm sorry I raised you like a soldier, and then acted surprised when you treated me like the enemy."
We sat in that raw, vulnerable place for a long time. No one yelled, no one stormed out, no one won. It wasn't that kind of conversation. At one point, she asked quietly, "Do you regret what you did with my job?" I looked at her, at the woman she'd become, at the girl she'd been, at the stranger who'd thrown me out, at the stranger who just tracked me down to apologize. "Yes," I said. The word surprised me a little, but it felt right. "Yes, I regret it," I repeated. "Not because you didn't deserve consequences, you did, but because I sank to a place inside myself I didn't know existed. I became petty, secretive, cruel. I let my anger lead me instead of my love." I took a breath. "But I also understand," I added. "I understand why I went there. I understand why you went where you did. We're both standing in the rubble of our own bad coping mechanisms." She snorted. "That's one way to put it." We sat in the rubble together. Eventually, practical questions crept in. "So what now?" she asked, looking around the motel room. "Are you staying here?" "Until I figure something else out," I said. "I still own the house, no matter what you shouted that night." She flushed. "I know. I checked the records when I was looking for you.
I've been paying the mortgage in your absence. I saw that too, I said. Bank statements don't lie. We were both quiet for a moment. I don't want your house, she said softly. Not anymore. Every time I walk past it, it feels cursed. Funny you should say that, I muttered. I did curse it on my way out. She gave a small, startled laugh. She continued, I want you to have it. It's your security, your retirement, your memories. I'll sign whatever I need to sign to make that clear. I should have respected that from the beginning. I studied her face. And you? I asked. What's your plan now that you've been exiled from the land of PowerPoint and catered lunches? She rolled her eyes, but there was no real bite in it. I don't know, she admitted. My therapist says maybe this is an opportunity to reevaluate, to find something that doesn't consume my soul and spit out my bones. Your therapist and I might agree on that, I said. She smiled faintly. There are other firms, but I think I need to take a beat. I've been on that hamster wheel since high school. My whole identity is high-performing consultant. Now that it's gone, I feel empty and weirdly relieved. We were quiet for a while. You can stay with me, I heard myself say. The words surprised us both. At the house, I hurried on. If I move back in, there's room. We just need rules, real ones, adult ones. Not my old dictatorship, not your, this is my house now, get out version. She blinked. Are you sure? She asked. No, I said honestly. I'm not sure at all. But I'm tired of motel microwaves, and you look like you're one strong breeze away from falling over. Maybe we can, I don't know, learn how to be around each other without turning every disagreement into a war. She looked at me a long time. I'd like that, she said finally, if you're willing to do the hard work. I've done hard work my whole life. This will just be a different kind. It wasn't simple, of course. Real life rarely is. There were calls to make. I met with a lawyer, briefly, just to make sure getting my own house back wouldn't spiral into some nightmare. Turned out, all I needed to do was show ID'd and formally notify her to vacate as a guest, not a tenant. We agreed, between us, not to make it ugly. She moved out before any paper was served. We went together, that first day to the house. Standing on the porch again, without police, without shouting, felt surreal. Feels smaller, she said quietly. You're bigger. I mean, inside. We both stood in the doorway for a moment, neither of us crossing the threshold. Want to go in first? You cursed it, she said with a crooked smile. You should be the one to break that. I laughed despite myself. I stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of her shampoo and the vanilla candles she likes. Some of her furniture was still there. The couch we'd bought together 5 years ago. The rug with the grease stain from that night with her coworkers. It's weird, she said, trailing her fingers along the wall. It's like a museum of our worst selves. Then we'll redecorate, I said. Paint some walls, move some furniture.
Tear out whatever doesn't serve us. You mean like the old battlefield map on the fridge? She teased. I opened the fridge. The old chore chart, yellowed and curling, was still clipped under a magnet. I pulled it down. Step 1, I said, tearing it in half. She watched, eyes shining. Step 2, she added, pulling a marker from her purse. She went to the whiteboard near the door where we used to write reminders. In shaky letters, she wrote, House rule number 1, we talk before we explode. We stood there, looking at the words. Good start, I said. It took time. We tripped over old patterns like rugs. I'd catch myself making little digs about her job hunt, her sleep schedule, her eating habits. She'd snap back with therapy jargon used like a knife. But we practiced stopping. Sometimes too late, sometimes just in time. Can we pause? She'd say when voices rose.
Can we try this again without calling each other names in our heads? Old me would have called that soft. New me called it grown up. We went to therapy together once. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and I spent most of the session wanting to argue with the therapist. But there was a moment, near the end, when the therapist said, "You both used the tools you had in very destructive ways. The goal now isn't to pretend that didn't happen. It's to build new tools." Driving home, my daughter said, "You know, you really are like a gladiator trainer." "Oh?" I asked, wary. "You put me in the arena," she said, "taught me to fight, but you never taught me when to put the sword down." "And you?" I replied. She sighed. "I learned how to swing the sword at anyone who made me feel small, including you." We were quiet. "I don't want to fight you anymore." "Then maybe we'll both learn to put the swords down," I said. As for revenge, did it work? Well, she lost her job. Her reputation took a hit. Word travels in those circles. Missed the big Henderson meeting, people say, like that's her whole story. She doesn't have that director title. Not yet, anyway. She freelances now. Smaller clients, less glamour, more control over her hours. Her therapist calls it reclaiming agency. I call it her not working herself into an early grave. I kept my house. She lives there too, for now, in the spare room. We have clear, written rules about money, privacy, dishes, guests. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up in that house and listen. No police knocking, no shouting, just the soft sounds of another person breathing down the hall. I think about the moment in the motel when she stood in my doorway and said, "Please, I don't have anywhere else to go." I think about the way I felt watching her on that curb, shut out of her glass tower. Revenge gave me a kind of satisfaction. I won't lie. Watching her fall from a place she'd climbed so ruthlessly felt, for a moment, like justice. But it didn't give me back my house. It didn't give me back the years we'd spent in a Cold War. What brought those back, slowly, imperfectly, was something a lot less cinematic. Talking. Listening. Owning our part of the wreckage. The real twist is this. By becoming my daughter's secret enemy, I finally saw exactly how much of me I'd poured into her. The ambition, the stubbornness, the capacity for cruelty when threatened. She was right that night on the porch. I did raise her to be this way. But now, at 60, sitting at my own kitchen table with her across from me, both of us drinking cheap coffee and circling job postings with a pen, I'm trying to raise her again. And myself. Not into gladiators, into something softer. Stronger in a different way. "You know," she said the other day, looking at the fridge where our new rules hung, "if my old coworkers could see me now, they'd laugh." "Why?" I asked. "Because I thought I was untouchable," she said. "Now I know I'm not. Kind of a useful lesson." I raised an eyebrow. "Desperate revenge, the new self-help method." She snorted. "Please don't start a seminar, Mom." We left. Real laughter, this time. Not sharp, not bitter. The house isn't cursed anymore. It's haunted, sure, by the ghosts of who we used to be. But we're learning to live with them. And every now and then, when I walk past the hallway table and see my old cleaning badge sitting there next to her deactivated company card, I feel a chill. They're reminders of how far we were willing to go to hurt each other or protect ourselves, and of how, in the end, the scariest, most desperate revenge I ever took wasn't getting her fired. It was letting her back in.
So another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.